One escaped prisoner, sir.
The android.
She's real enough. Android's legs don't blister. Sharaz Jack smuggled in copies of this girl and her friend the doctor. And I'm afraid, sir, that he also copied me.
Copied you?
I've been held prisoner at his camp for months now, sir. And what you thought was me is in fact an android. A spy for Sharaz Jack.
You mean I've had an android as my ADC without knowing it?
When he made that copy of me, sir, it was like looking into a mirror. He's incredibly clever.
What a blind fool I've been.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Hello, it's Scott.
Hello, Scott. It is... What am I talking about? Right now we are looking through we are continuing our journey through Doctor Who chronologically this year, visiting every Doctor for every month pretty much, and we are with Mr. Peter Davidson at the moment, halfway through what the hell is this episode called? Holy moly, my mind has drawn a blank the second we started recording. This is a nightmare. What's this episode called? Hang on, I'll get there.
I'll give you a chance.
Oh my god, what a way to start. Holy crap. Oh. Oh my god. What is this episode called?
Starts with C.
Caves of Androzani. I got there. This is the Caves of Androzani we're watching at the moment and talking about. We covered parts 1 and 2 last week, which you can check out on our YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And while you're doing that, why not leave the podcast a nice review? That'd be pretty groovy. Our podcast has been doing amazing recently. It's been really exciting to watch. Probably not going to be doing amazing after this botched intro, but if you want to hear some very good behind the scenes and the writing off segments about this episode and learn just how it came into being, very much recommend listening to parts 1 and 2 from last week before jumping into parts 3 and 4, because we are just going to dive straight into this episode. So, Scott, if you're ready to dive into the episode, I am.
Yeah, of course.
My slip hands in the air over here. Why? Because I'll kill you if you don't. Not a very persuasive argument, actually, Stubbs, because I'm going to die soon anyway. Unless, of course, I give it to a count of 3. Unless, of course, I can find the antidote. I owe it to my friend to try because I got her into this. So you see, I'm not going to let you stop me now.
So the episode picks up immediately where we left off last week. And by immediately, I, of course, mean about 30 seconds back from where we left off last week, with the Doctor hiding behind some cliffs as the Holiday Armadillo comes in, starts killing all those soldiers. And we're left wondering, how is the Doctor going to get out of this one? Last week, and we discover this week that he gets out of it by just kind of walking away from this whole situation. Which is one of the most is one of the most underwhelming cliffhanger resolutions I think we've ever seen with Classic Who, and that's saying something. Like,
oh god, yeah. So the script originally had the Doctor running away while the magma creature was eating another person. It's a big distraction. But here, the Doctor just walks away, and the magma creature's kind of chasing the Doctor very slowly.
Yeah, but you kind of just it's the monster is the biggest issue we have with this story, really, and it doesn't feel like a threat, even in the Doctor. Like, the Doctor just walking away from it is the biggest, like, oh, this thing is not important at all to the story. And guess what? It's really not. It's really not important at all. You could get rid of it and nothing would change. It is a big waste of time, and I don't like it. But the episode properly starts as we go see Mr. Salatine, the real Salatine, not the android Salatine, as he is with... Oh my god, names are leaving me. Who's the girl's name? What's her name? Companion lady.
Perry.
Perry, yes, he is with Perry, and they are talking to the general dude, and this is where Salatine is like, hey, by the way, the guy that you thought was me, he's actually an android, and I'm the real me. I've been the real me the whole time for ages, and the android dude's the fake me, and you've been getting, like, lied to and spied on this whole time, which the general's, like, really accepting. Like, he doesn't question it really at all. He's just like, yeah, oh crap, I guess you are the real one. Oops. Like
Yeah, I feel like if I was a general, yeah, I feel like if I was a general, I'd be like, wait a minute, there's two of you, so are you the clone? Are you trying to trick me, or are you telling the truth? Because I'm not sure at this point.
Yeah, I would want to do some sort of test, like tell me something only Salatine could know, or show me something that only you would have, like a birth defect or something that got missed out on
penis.
the android. But I was trying to keep it PG. The general's just like, whoops, big whoops on my part. I guess I'm just going to listen to you, and we're gonna get one up on Jack, since he doesn't know you've actually escaped yet. Speaking of Jack, we then cut to him as he's in the middle of his business deal with the Rambo guys until the Doctor appears out of the shadows and gets himself captured immediately again, which is an interesting one for the Doctor, isn't it? He escapes, he gets out, and then he like hides away from the soldiers to escape again, and then he walks around a corner, drops down some stairs, and just gets captured. It's like, all right, cool. Why did you bother escaping?
I mean, to be fair, he thinks he's going to be led back to try and find Perry again, I think, is what's going on here. Because otherwise he's kind of out of options. He doesn't really know what to do in this story.
Yeah, I think, it falls into, they wanted the Doctor to go with the Rambo guys so that they could continue the political story. But they also wanted Salatine and Perry to get to the General. And how do you get Salatine and Perry to get to the General when they're trapped in a cell with an android that can see humans? Well, the Doctor can get them out. And the Doctor's out. Oh, crap, we have to get the Doctor back in again. So it's just a writing thing. You kind of got yourself into a corner at that point.
One thing I do want to talk about is whenever we see Jack, we always hear some kind of rattlesnake music, which I really dig. It was by request from the director to the composer, and I looked up rattlesnakes and what they kind of symbolize, and I got, for many native nations, different snakes hold varied and particular meanings, but rattlesnakes often feature specifically as spiritual ancestors, powerful skin-shedding warriors, and divine messengers and bringers of rain. And when I thought of, powerful skin-shedding warriors, he's burnt, his skin was kind of shedded in a way. So it's kind of fun imagery with in terms of what they're doing with the music here, I think.
Yeah. I don't know about any of that, because I was pretty sure he was just a dude with a mask on. I don't know if there's any real metaphors to come and dissect from music and things. Like, are you saying that there's themes and that doesn't make sense? This is a TV show. How could there be a hidden character thing? I don't understand.
Yeah, what you touch on there is usually the Doctor Who directors don't really talk to the composers. And I feel like this is a unique opportunity for I completely forgot his name, by the way. Who directed this episode?
You're asking me? Are you asking me?
Graham Harper.
For not remembering people's names. This is like my one thing on this show.
But it shows how good Graham Harper is of a director. He's just like, I want to go to the music guy and get this kind of sound because I feel like it fits specifically with his character. And, not many directors, to this day on Doctor Who, not many directors do that, and it's a unique director I think we have in our hands here.
Yeah, it's especially, I mean, you brought it up briefly, especially for Classic Who, where a lot of the time, the composer was kind of left to do his own thing, and you'd get soundtracks that sound like laser beams. Yeah, if we turn our minds back to the Sea Devils, where it's just pew 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 pew, and you don't know if it's the sound effects or the music you're listening to at any given moment. Whereas the music is used much more cinematically. There's much more meaning and themes behind it, and it evokes more of an emotion when you hear the sound rather than like a headache, which I guess pain is an emotion. Kind of annoyance, but the episode continues as we go to Salatine and the General talking about how they're going to be able to get one up on Jack, but they're going to have to be super clever about it because anything that he says to Android Salatine, Jack is going to know about immediately, because they have like basically an internet connection that allows Jack to see everything that Salatine is seeing, and they can communicate with one another. We then cut back to Jack. Lots of back and forth in the opening of this episode. It's very quickly paced. Again, the pacing in this episode is fantastic. It's been consistent throughout this whole story. No scene.
Yeah, it's quickly paced, but not too quick. You get enough from each scene, so it's not like you didn't learn anything new from the new scene, like they just cut to.
Yeah, there's no, like, Classic Who's very guilty of this sometimes as well, where you cut to a scene for 2 seconds, and then cut to another scene, and then cut to another scene, and then cut to another scene, where you're not really getting much information, but time is technically passing. Whereas here, everybody gets a moment to breathe, they get out the information they need to get out, and then they moves on to the next scene. And the scene it cuts to is thematically appropriate. You know, they're talking about Jack and his androids, and then we cut to Jack and his androids. You know, we're not just cutting to somebody wandering around a facility aimlessly. Hand of Fear, I'm looking at you. But we then cut into Jack with the Doctor as Jack summons his androids to come out with some bags of cocaine to give to the Rambo soldier guys. And this cocaine is what's making everybody so youthful on the planet Androzani Major. Hey, I remembered it. Which Jack, of course, controls, as we learned last week. The Doctor says something snippy to him, and he gets a karate chop to the throat, which is pretty cool. You said it hurt him in real life?
Yeah, because Christopher Gable couldn't actually see out of his mask, he accidentally hit Peter Davison a little bit too hard. And it actually really hurt Peter Davison here.
That's really funny. But what I liked about this is when it's a tiny little detail, but when he grabs his hand, you see the blisters on his hand from the poisoning that he's got running through his body right now. And they don't really call attention to it. They will call attention to it in a scene coming up, where if you missed this scene, where it's got like a whole close-up on his hand. But, you know, just this moment here where you can see that physical damage on him already, where you're like, oh, something is actually wrong with the Doctor. You know, something's not quite right. He's actually getting hurt right now. I love how his death is so actually, like, it's like drawn out and painful, his entire death in this story. It's very good.
And the entire time he's just fighting through the pain as well. It's like he's not ever not in pain, but he has to fight through it constantly, which is a big test in endurance for the Doctor here.
Yes. And speaking of the Doctor being in pain, Jack is pretty annoyed that his hot new girlfriend Perry's nowhere to be seen, and he orders the Doctor's arms to be ripped off extremely slowly, which is just, it's, you know, some classic Who violence, as we watch the Doctor get his, like, arms pulled apart, and you know, he gets interrogated about it, but he's got no real answers, because he can't give an answer. He doesn't actually know where Perry is, which causes
the Doctor
Jack
just doesn't get a break here. He's constantly a victim in this story.
Just getting beat up left and right, bouncing off walls, you know. But he gets dropped down, and you know, the Rambo guys are like, "Can we take him?" And Jack is at first like, "No, I don't want you to take him. Whatever, take him. I don't give a crap." And he just leaves. I thought that was hilarious. Like, where he gets so like flustered and like, "Oh God, no! I kind of just want Perry. Go. I don't care about the Doctor. I don't care. Whatever." Like, but the Doctor ends up getting captured by the Rambo dudes, as we then cut to Android Salatine with the General as they're talking about mud. This is the one scene where I was like, okay, I don't care about you talking about mud bursts. I get what you're doing, where you're just kind of trying to play it nonchalantly, but this is a boring conversation. But the whole point of this scene is Perry wakes up from her nap or coma or whatever was wrong with her, and she makes a small like gasp noise, which attracts the attention of Android Salatine, who scans through the walls and sees that there's 2 body heats with Perry and human Salatine, which leaves the question of where was human Salatine planning on doing? Like, because he and the scene coming up is like, oh yeah, no, that android definitely knows about me now because he can detect body heat through walls easily. I was like, why didn't you leave the room? Like,
classic Salatine. He sometimes forgets some information he knows already. Like last week when he said there is no cure, but there is a cure.
Yeah. He's like,
he just
there's
forgets.
no cure for
Selective
that,
amnesia.
except of course for the cure. And then what I really liked here as well with this scene is Perry genuinely looks disheveled. Like, she looks really ill. They've done her hair's a mess. She's probably wearing little to no makeup. She looks tired. Her eyes are all like watery and sad. It's like, oh yeah, you look like an ill person. You look genuinely very ill. And, the general's got little to no sympathy for her, where he's like, I would have shot you in the face if you weren't already dying, and if I didn't need you to lead me to Jack space. But this is also where Salatine's selective information comes in, because, Perry's like, oh no, like, we were prisoners with Jack, like, the whole time. We were there with Salatine. He knows this. And then Salatine's like, oh yeah, no, that's true, actually, by the way. Like, I could have told you earlier that, like, she's on the level and she's not, like, working with the enemy. I just forgot to do that. Like,
also, later on, he's like, oh yeah, Jack has been intercepting your transmissions this entire time. Every time you've been communicating with other people, Jack has been on it this entire time. I forgot to tell you that. It's like,
yeah, be fair to him. He's gone through a lot. He's been eating nothing but porridge for God knows how long. But we then cut to a very nice shot from a Shakespeare play as we watch the Doctor walk down this like corridor within the caves, and there's like a spotlight and mist around him, and he collapses into the spotlight. It's very, very pretty. It is very much a stage. Like, it looks like it would be shot on a stage, but like I don't think it's too distracting, because it's like, oh, this is a nice shot. Like, goddamn, Classic Who doesn't often do nice shots, and this entire story is filled with them. And this is a standout one where I'm like, goddamn, they were really thinking about cinematography here.
Yeah, which is very rare in classic Doctor Who. It's baffling how good this episode looks for a first-time director on the show as well. Like, he's only directed a few episodes of a TV show before this. So this is like his 4th episode of TV or something. It's wildly good.
Well, he clearly wanted to like prove something. He's like, I have to get a job again after this. We then cut to the General and Robot Salatine again, where they're feeding him some misinformation, being like, oh yeah, no, we definitely know where Jack is, give him all this information, blah blah blah, playing a trick on him, which does Android Salatine super kind of chill about seeing two other bodies through the wall. Like, I know he's like probably planning something, but I it's been a couple weeks since I watched this episode. I don't remember if he even does anything about seeing those 2 bodies. He probably does. But he's right now he seems super chill about it. Yeah. But then we cut to the Doctor on the ship with the Rambo dudes, and this is where we get the extreme close up of his hand. As it's a nice pan, because we go from his hand to around the rest of the ship. But it's like, if you missed that his hand was damaged, look, see, it's hurt. He's got a sore hand. Anyway, here's the rest of the ship. It's a nice bit of establishing. And some nice camera work, very on the nose with seeing it, but show don't tell. This is technically showing and not telling. He's, the Doctor's not going, ow, my hand. Like,
it also helps to establish that the Doctor is very much handcuffed in this scene, because if you're looking at him straight on, his hands are just behind his back, and you're not entirely aware that he's handcuffed in this moment. But I think it does 2 things there. I think.
Yeah, it's very good. Rambo leader dude sends everybody away from the ship, or not away from the ship, but like off to their resting quarters, because he has to go call the boss, and he blindfolds up the Doctor. He calls up his boss, which is weird politics guy that likes to look into the camera, and they start talking about how they talked Jack into giving them more cocaine next time, and he gave them less cocaine than they would have liked this time, but that's okay. And then the politics man notices the doctor and looks into the camera, and he's like, oh, what is going on here? This is so strange. You know, I wasn't expecting to see this guy again. I thought he was dead. Someone's been lying to me. And, you know, it's been a few weeks since I watched this episode. Watching it back now, I forgot how much of, like, a weird energy him looking into the camera is. I like it, but it like, at times, I'm like, it kind of feels like a kid. Like, I know it's a kid's show, but it kind of feels like a kid's show where you're, like, you know, looking at, like, a Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, where, like, Mickey Mouse would look at the camera and be like, this is something that'll help us out later on. You know? Like,
I get
but it's
you.
cool. I
get
do
you.
like it.
It does feel more Shakespearean to me. But you know, in this script, I think this makes a bad script good, because if he wasn't looking at the camera and he was just saying those words aloud, you would be aware of the characters. You know, you'd be like, the characters should be able to hear this, but they don't for some reason. But the fact that he's breaking the fourth wall means that the characters aren't aware of what he's saying. So it's more of a visual cue, and it really helps things out. Because, you know, it would be such a weird thing for him to just start talking out loud for no reason.
Yeah, it is. You know, we were just praising this episode for doing show not tell. This is very much tell don't show. With you know, but like at the same time, like there's only so many ways in 20 minutes you can convey this like political drama that this politician dude has got like so many things going on where he's like, crap, the doctor is alive, how could that possibly be? Is somebody working against me? Is it the president? I don't think it could possibly be the president. That wouldn't make sense because of this and this. Oh no, what's happening? You know, and like there is ways you could probably convey that with showing not telling. You know, you could just have him look off sternly being like, but then it's kind of left up to the audience's interpretation. Here, I feel like they had built this complicated little politics thing. They wanted to talk about it. And him talking to the camera is such a different way of doing it, and it does work so much better than if he was just talking to himself, for sure. Especially because the other characters aren't saying anything, so it's like, is everybody just listening to him talk to himself right now? Like, what are they doing? But this, you can kind of, like, because he's talking to you, you don't think about what the other characters are doing because you're busy looking him in the eye, going, "Oh, this is weird." You know, it's kind of like time stops as you go into his head.
We also got a great shot of the main Rambo dude, Stott, with his hands behind his head, and in between his arms meeting, you can see the TV monitor with the politics dude on it. And again, it's just such a creative little shot for classic Doctor Who. You'd never see that usually.
Yeah. But, you know, they then end up hanging up the call, and the general dude's like, I should have killed you, Dr. Gurr. And he kind of, like, leaves off in a storm, and we zoom in kind of weirdly and awkwardly into the doctor's hand as we see him, like, picking the lock of his handcuffs and whatnot, which is, like, fine. Like, how else are you going to show, like, that? But it's just a weird zoom in. I was like, oh, this is okay. Like, minor thing. The episode continues as we cut to the General and android Salatine, as the General's like, hey, I think Jack's over here. I think this is definitely where he is. You should go check that out with a bunch of guys, and you'll definitely find Jack. I promise that's where I think he is. And Salatine gives him this amazing death stare over the shoulder, Android Salatine. It is a terrifying death stare where you're like, oh Christ. And it's
such a great shot too, because the focus pool, it was focused on the General, and the moment he turns his head, it focuses on Salatine, the Salatine android instead. And it's, again, you know, classic Doctor Who is limited in terms of like its shooting schedule. Sometimes we would have to shoot stuff out of focus because we had no time to literally focus pool. Like, it's 9:45 at night and we have 15 minutes left until the electricity is shut off. So the time and effort it takes to like get this focus pool perfect is a lot, and it really helps the episode. Again, it's more cinematic than usual.
It is, and it looks great. We then cut to the Doctor, who's suddenly got super strength. Because he's like chained up to this wall, and he just kind of pulls against it and manages to ping the piece of metal off using his bare strength. It's either a really crappy piece of flimsy metal he was chained to, or the Doctor is stronger than you'll ever know.
I mean, it's one of those things when you're in extreme stress, your strength kind of elevates.
Yeah.
You know, it's a classic
Yeah, he's
scenario
got
of the
that-
mother of the car saving her baby.
he's-
She
he's-
fucking rips open that door.
Yeah, he's got that adrenaline running through him. Yeah, I guess that's believable. We then cut to Android Salatine walking through the dredges of the Caves of Androzani, and he comes across Jack, who's standing all sexually in the cliffs. You know, he's kind of like presenting his crotch in this tight leather as the mist surrounds him. Like, and they're like, the general is trying to deceive me. You know, the general thinks that he's one step ahead of me, but really I'm one step ahead of him, which adds even more like panic and intrigue. We're like, oh crap, Jack is actually mega smart. You know, like the whole time this episode, we're thinking the general and Salatine finally have got one up on Jack. You know, they're finally going to be able to beat him, and then Jack comes along and he's like, actually, I know everything that's going on right now. I know what you're planning, so we're going to plan against their plan that's trying to beat my plan that they think I've got planned. 4D chess going on at the moment. We then cut to politics. Hang on, Christ. We then cut to the politics man as he's chatting with the general, learning about the president coming over, which is basically where the president's like, not the president, the politics man, it gets the bright idea of, I'm going to murder the president. That's going to be what I do this episode. Spoilers. I'm going to murder the president.
And yeah, you said something off camera about the actual hologram doesn't look like it's in shot. It looks like it's behind him. And I think that's usually because when a shot is like this, we see the behind of the person in the hologram if you cut back to like last week's episodes. But here it's just the front. It's just front facing, which is really... It kind of breaks its own rules of how the hologram worked from last week.
There's a lot wrong with it for it to be front facing. I mean, like, unless the guy is talking like Shakespearean, like he's got the back, like the hologram is behind him and he's just got the back to the hologram, which would make like no sense. Like, what a weird way to stand. But if it's supposed to be in front of him, the guy talking, his picture needs to be flipped the other way around because we're looking at him as if he's looking at us, not that we're looking from his perspective. So like we need to be kind of over his shoulder, and it also needs to be bigger. So I don't know if it's supposed to be behind him or in front of him. It's a really awkward looking effect shot. What if the actual few awkward effect shots?
Yeah, my only guess is they probably just ran out of time to do this effect. That's my only guess, and it's distracting, but not too distracting. The shot only lasts like 20 seconds. The scene only lasts 20 seconds, so it's not too bad. It's not. It doesn't break the episode at all.
No, it's fine. We then cut to the Doctor back on the ship as he spots like this beam of like light, just like burning like ion energy or whatever you want to say, and he uses that to burn off his cuffs. He first burns his hand a little bit, which I kind of liked, where the Doctor was like, "Oocha, I fucked that up." Then he goes in and he breaks off his cuffs. I don't know what the purpose of that is, but I guess it's a spaceship, so it doesn't need to have a purpose. It's a future ship. We then cut to a really creepy scene with Perry and Jack, who has snuck in to the General's base, knowing that the General is otherwise distracted, and kidnaps Perry. Basically by chloroforming her on the face. He gives off rapey vibes in all the episodes, but this episode he goes above and beyond with the rapey vibes, doesn't he?
He really does, yeah. Also, this episode more alludes to the fact that it's a Phantom of the Opera homage. The desperate for a girl, a lover of beauty by himself, scarred and hiding under a mask. Holmes said he thought the key to Doctor Who was having something that was already familiar to viewers, so he constantly wrote stories with parallels to other media like Frankenstein from Brain of Morbius or Sherlock. And I can see where he's coming from, because some of the best Doctor Who episodes are kind of homages to other media.
Yeah, it makes you able to sell the episode a lot easier, because you can immediately associate what the episode's themes and ideas are going for if you're basically like, it's space politics with Phantom of the Opera. You're like, oh, okay, I kind of get what's going on in this episode. Then you can judge really early on if you want to vibe with it, if you want to watch it, or if you don't. It's not 100% like Phantom of the Opera, but it definitely shares similar themes and character with the opera Phantom himself.
And also like the famous saying is there's only like 7 stories in existence, so why not borrow things from pieces here and there? It works. It totally works.
We then cut to the president coming to visit Mr. Politics Man. And this is a very dark scene where the politics man is like, President, I've heard a whisper, a rumor, that someone's out to kill you. There's going to be an assassination attempt on you, which is really funny when you consider what he's about to do. It's a really dark thing to say, and the president gets all worried. He's like, oh crap, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get into protection, kind of cancel my appearances and stuff like that. And the politician's like, yeah, that's a really smart idea. I tell you what, you go up my lift, we don't go in the way you came out, or don't go out the way you came in, go out a different way. You can take my private lift. It'll escort you to safety. You'll be doing great. Then he goes to shake his hand, but instead pushes him as the lift doors open, and he plummets down where there's no lift to be seen, just an empty hole. And the effect shot of him plummeting down to his doom is not terrible. It's not horrendous. What I like is he's got like a. I'm trying to get a still image of it, but ITV sucks. But there's a full. We see his entire body rotate in 3D, which is super impressive for the time. It is. Usually if somebody's falling to their death, it's a still image or a flat shot of them going, as that flat shot gets smaller and smaller, and it's really funny. Him rotating just adds this other level of believability to it. He is, however, falling into the movie Tron.
The environment doesn't help, but it's a super ambitious shot for the time. And we just watched Terror of the Autons, which was made like 10 years before this, and you can see all the outlines of the characters in the blue screen. Here there's not really an outline. It looks really well lit, and it looks really believable. It looks really solid. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a matte painting or a very early CG rendering with him superimposed on top. The thing that lets it down is there's no shadows.
Yeah,
but shadows are hard. Especially back then, shadows are hard to do. But yeah, the actual rotoscoping him out, flawlessly done. There's not a single little mark on him. It looks very good indeed.
For 1980s Doctor Who especially, that's a top quality shot.
Yeah. The scene then continues hilariously as the secretary lady comes in and the politics guy's like, the president's been assassinated, he's been killed, he fell to his death, it's been such a tragic accident. Anyway, send up this word here, get this done, I'm going to travel to this planet and become a hero. But the two of them are talking so monotonely to each other. It's both of these people are psychopaths. Both of them, there's no emotion. They're saying all these things because they know that they have to say these things from a political standpoint.
Yeah.
But I feel like both of them are in on it, so they're just it's like rehearsing lines really quickly. There's no emotion, no anything behind it.
Yeah, she is 100%. She's 100% sure there's something off here. One of my favorite lines from this scene is basically when the scene ends and he's like, "Oh yeah, just have it lift engineer shot," which is apparently a homage to Julius Caesar.
Okay, I don't know enough about Caesar's assassination.
Never do I, but
the only thing I know
in
about
terms
Caesar's
of
assassination,
I mean in terms of Shakespeare's play, that's what's kind of referencing.
I know nothing about the play either, but the thing with Caesar's assassination is all of his friends killed him, because that way they were all equally guilty in his death, and nobody could rat each other out and be like, "You killed Caesar," because all of them killed Caesar. Yeah, that's he got stabbed by all his friends. Yeah.
Is that wait, what? Caesar was a person? It's not a salad dressing?
I mean, they turned him into a salad. They chopped all those little. We then cut to Jack as he is extremely horrendous to Perry the entire time. You know, she wakes up and she's super scared, and he's just going around being like, "Oh, we're gonna get married. We're gonna have a great time. You're gonna be my new girlfriend, and we're just gonna love it. We're gonna be so cool together. It's gonna be awesome." And I hated it. I hate watching this. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was so he does such a good job of being an absolute freak, because it is so creepy.
Yeah,
like he starts sniffing her hair at the end of the scene, and it's like, oh my god. Like,
yeah, he goes through so many emotions during this monologue, and he's entirely masked, but he can feel every single emotion. It feels believable. It's such a good performance from Christopher Gable here.
yeah, he's got a great line where he's like, you know, "Do you think I'm mad?" And Perry's like, "No, I don't think you're mad." And he goes, "I am mad." And he starts like yelling and smashing stuff. It's like, oh Christ. Like, and during this whole scene, we briefly and extremely blink and you miss it cut to the General and Salatine as the General punches the bed and goes, Perry escaped. So they don't think Perry's been kidnapped. They think Perry's run away, which is actually a really important piece of information that they really quickly gloss over.
Yeah, it feels like there might have been more to that scene that was left in the cutting room floor, but we get enough information from that scene at least.
We then cut to the Doctor, taking control of the ship as the Rambo dudes start cutting in the door, saying they're going to kill him, as the Doctor pilots the ship back towards Androzani. Oh, Christ.
As the Doctor is looking out into space here, you can see the same effect that the regeneration has. And this was, I forgot his name again. Graham Harper's way of showing that the Doctor is actually fighting off his regeneration here. Because in the script, Robert Holmes just wrote, "Oh yeah, the Doctor is momentarily confused," and forgot his name again. What the fuck?
You're doing well.
No, it's not coming back to me now. I know. The director thought, yeah, this is a perfect place to use a regeneration effect to show that the Doctor is just fighting off his regeneration. He is at his last moments here.
Yeah, that's very clever. That's not something I picked up on watching it, probably because I wasn't paying attention. But that's very good. And you know, the Rambo dude's like, "Okay, Doctor." Once they cut in the door, you've got
Graham
to
Harper.
make your way. There you go. You've got to make your way over to us, or we'll shoot you in the face. And the Doctor's like, "That's not really convincing because I'm gonna die either way. So I'm going to crash your ship now because I have to try and save Perry." And then we end on close up of his face as we hear the ship like break into orbit, and then we cut to the credits. It's a much better cliffhanger than the one we ended on last week for this episode. This is a solid episode all around, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's quite often, I think, actually, episode 2 in Doctor Who stories tends to be the weaker episode.
You mean episode 3?
No, episode 3 is really good. I'm comparing this to last week's episode.
Oh, right, okay.
I think this episode is solid. Like, it establishes a lot of character stuff. Not really a lot moves forward plot-wise until the end, but then you get the assassination of the president, the Doctor crashing his ship, Perry's being captured by Jack again. You know, all the places are in place for the finale, whereas with episode 2 there was a lot of plot pushed forward with that as well, but there was also the padding crap with the dragon. You know, there was just extra stuff that didn't need to be in it. But that being said, episode 2 of this story is still leaps and bounds better than most episode 2s in Doctor Who.
Oh God, yes.
Classic Who anyway. But episode 3 I think is a really, really good time. What about you?
Yeah, it's spoilers, but I think every episode of this story is really solid. There's not a single bad episode, which is very rare for classic Doctor Who. You know, every episode feels like it's keeping that momentum.
Yes, yeah. It's constantly building the stakes. You know, every episode one-ups the last episode in a particular way. And this episode does a very good job of leading us into the finale, which we shall look at right now.
Doctor, what's happened?
Perry, I see Professor Jackage newest stuff. Good old Jackage.
Jacket, you got the bat's milk?
Contains an antivesicant, I imagine. Interesting.
Where is it?
What?
The bat's milk.
Finished. Only enough for you.
There must be something I can do. Tell me.
Too late, Perry. Going soon. It's time to say goodbye.
Don't give up. You can't leave me now.
I might regenerate. I don't know.
Where is it?
Feels different this time.
What was it you always told me, Doctor? Braveheart? You'll survive, Doctor.
Must survive. Too many of your enemies would delight in your death, Doctor.
Braveheart?
You're needed. You mustn't die,
Too
Doctor.
many of your enemies would delight in your death, Doctor.
You know
You're
that,
needed.
Doctor.
You mustn't die, Doctor.
You know that, Doctor.
Adric?
You're needed.
You know that.
You mustn't die, Doctor.
No, my dear Doctor, you must die. Die, Doctor. Die, Doctor.
Doctor?
You're expecting someone else?
I...
That's 3 eyes in one breath. Makes you sound a rather egotistical young lady.
What's happened?
Change, my dear. And it seems not a moment too soon.
So yeah, just before we get into part 4 of this story, I just wanted to mention that there's probably going to be a trailer coming out tomorrow, and the minute that trailer arrives, we'll record our reaction to the trailer, and we'll upload it onto the YouTube channel. And if you want to watch that, just subscribe to our YouTube channel down below. Yeah.
There'll probably be an audio version as
Yep.
well. So if you hate looking at us but love our voices, it'll be available on Spotify and wherever you get podcasts.
So yeah, give us a good old follow and ring the bell.
Yeah, it's important to say these things halfway through an episode, I think.
Yeah.
Not at the start or at the end. Bang in the middle. Right.
Just a reminder. Just a reminder.
Yeah. But as we begin episode 4, it starts off immediately where we left off episode 3, with the Doctor taking control of the ship and crashing it into the planet Androzani, which then causes a big old chase scene to happen as he's running through the sands, the deserts of the planet, getting shot at, and there's bullets firing, and they're really bad at aiming. The first 10 minutes of this episode is basically pure action, and it's pure action almost entirely of people shooting walls. We really need to work on their actual training, teaching them how to handle their weapons, because these guys are really, really bad at their job.
I mean, it's a classic
Really bad at their
complaint
job.
of plot armor, the Doctor can't be shot here, so they're going to be bad at shooting. It's the same with the Stormtroopers, or, it's a common theme in television and movies.
It is. Any bad guy cannot shoot the main character, because they suddenly can't aim. But we also cut into the Caves of Androzani. Hey, that's the name of the story. As we're following the robot Salatine with a bunch of his men through the caves, and they're like, "Are we lost? I don't think we're lost. We kind of know where we're going, right? There's this place that goes over this way, and that's the right way to be doing this." With the general and things are with him also. Is it the wait? Is this the android? I don't remember. No, is this regular
Yeah,
Salatine
see,
or
we're
android
confused
Salatine?
now because he's wearing a helmet, so we can't tell his hairstyle.
Yeah, I can't see his hair.
I think it must be the robot.
But it's because
one.
these guys all get But is it because these guys all get like murdered by Jack's robots? And isn't Robot Salatine with a different people, like in the north side or something? It's impossible to tell. There's a Salatine, and they all get like gunned down, and there's a big fight scene happening with the Jack's androids and all these human dudes inside the caves. As again, this is a big actiony opening explosion finale, and it's really fun to watch. Usually, I'm not a huge fan whenever Doctor Who does like actiony stuff, especially when it takes up half an episode. But for this, it feels like it's earned it because it feels like this has been like a building up to a pressure point, and now everything is literally exploding.
Because the last three episodes weren't that action focused. It was more plot. This is the big resolution.
Unless you, I think you're forgetting about the really terrifying dragon that caused so much chaos and destruction.
Oh god, yeah, yeah.
That was so much action. Yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat.
But the Doctor can. Speaking of edging, the Doctor's penis explodes as he collapses in the sand, and there's this great moment where he's like, I can't make it back, I'm sorry, Perry. You know, like he's like, oh crap, I'm done for. At least I tried, but I'm not going to be able to save you. This is it. But then like a mudslide or whatever, like these mud pockets start exploding. Again, plot armor stuff. This is very convenient that it starts to happen right as the Doctor's about to get caught. But it's cinematic, you know, it causes drama. But it does look like his penis explodes the way that it's shot, because he's like it's like low down to the ground, like his head's the closest thing to the camera, and he's lying like parallel. What like with depth, his body's like going like inward to the frame, and the explosion comes right out from his penis, and it is a hilarious shot. Absolutely 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's one of the few images you sent me when you were actually watching this episode in one sitting, by the way, which is very rare for you. Usually you don't watch it all in one sitting. Yeah,
I was playing Zelda at the same time, and watching it. Yeah, it was a fun way to spend my morning. We then cut to Jack, as it turns out his androids aren't doing as well as they thought, or as well as he thought that they would be doing, as they are getting mowed down relentlessly. And he's like, "Oh God, guys, we've got to come on, pull back, guys, hello. Oh no, this isn't good." So the humans are putting up a bit more of a resistance as the Doctor climbs into the caves and breathes in sweet oxygen, which this shot is really strange because I think they wanted to like show that there was air in the cave, so there's like this like smoke filter going across the lens as the Doctor's like, oxygen. And I'm like, I don't think oxygen's that thick that you can see it, and if it is that thick that you can see it, I think you're gonna pass out.
It's more of a visual cue. It's fine.
Yeah. Jack's then chatting with Perry, and Perry's like, "Oh, maybe the general's gonna kill everybody." And Jack's like, "Oh, but not if I fix my robots, ha ha ha." But he gets into a brief kerfuffle with the general dude. Sorry, I have just suddenly started exploding like a nuclear missile has gone off. We are recording this in the afternoon, and I am Ginger, and the sun has come through my window and made me super overexposed. I am now just orange and a white ghost.
That's just you every day, though, you know.
Yeah, but like usually we record at nighttime, which is the time of my people, and you can never really tell, you know. But when the sun's out, my Christ, am I pale. Anyway, we cut to the Rambo guys back on the ship as they're saying the Doctor got away. But there's somebody else on the ship. Oh my God, it's Politics Man. What's Politics Man doing here? And does the Rambo guy kind of notice who he is? But it doesn't matter. He's not going to tell anybody anyway. We'll keep this all hush-hush on the down low. And then Leader Rambo and Politics guy start talking about how they need to get rid of Jack to capture his supply. Then they'll all be mega rich, and they'll share it just between them. They're going to kind of screw over their own men. The only question I really had here was, Politics guy suddenly learned how to teleport?
I mean, he could have just walked to the place off screen. going into his little.
But it's been like, but he's on the major planet, and he's gotten all the way to this other planet, landed, got onto the ship while all this action was going down within like 5-10 minutes. Like, you can teleport.
Yeah, sure. Teleportation.
He's got the ability of teleportation.
Teleportation is a thing that exists in Doctor Who, apart from the Hand of Fear, where we have to watch people walking around.
It is, yeah, that's true. I mean, when we were watching, what episode was it when everyone just started teleporting all over the place? Was it the Auton episode
Genesis.
or was it the Hartnell episode? Genesis, yeah. Genesis, yeah. When people just start teleporting into different rooms, it's like, okay. But like, we don't really need to see how he got here, I guess. It's just important
here
that
at least an entire episode has passed, so it's a lot less jarring than if it was the same episode.
I get that, except this episode takes place before the last episode ended, because it starts within the last 10 seconds of the last episode. Like, if there was more of a gap between the episodes, I would be able to believe it, but each episode bleeds into the last one, so it's like one long episode,
Wait, yeah, maybe they just okay, this is me not watching the episode in a while, so I'm not sure. The episode opens up with them going somewhere else. Is that not right? Like, they could just be on Androzani.
This episode opens up with the Doctor crashing the ship onto Androzani.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest.
No, it doesn't matter. I wasn't expecting it to throw you for such a loop.
But what I like
we
is...
then cut to Jack as...
What I like about this scene is the politics guy is still thinking the Doctor is involved in like a big scheme or something, where in reality he just accidentally landed on this planet and is clueless about the whole political system that's going on. He doesn't give a shit. He just wants to leave. Yeah,
he's just trying to get back to Perry.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get Perry out of the massive amount of danger that he's left her in.
But like every single character is like, the Doctor must be involved somehow.
But we then cut back to Jack as he's continuing his fight with the General, and they're having like a kerfuffle on the ground until the General pulls off Jack's mask and then screams in such terror it causes him to let go of Jack, and Jack pushes him away, and then crawls his way over to Perry, and Perry even screams and pushes him away, which makes him like crawl under the table, and the camera's this like handheld one take following with him. And it's really, really good. And what's great about it as well is we don't see his face. We're left up to our own imaginations of how horrific his face is, that it would stop you trying to fight him. It would stop you, like, even being super scared of him. You're even more scared of him, to be fair. You can't even look at him. He's that hideous. He's that, like, grotesque. And you're left to imagine what that would even look like, which is, it's a great little bit. It's a great little bit.
And on the DVD for this episode, you can actually see... Graham Harper actually direct the scene, and his direction style is really fascinating to watch, because he's basically going for the description of, oh yeah, you're crawling over here and the camera is following you, and Christopher Cable's like, should I go underneath a table? And Graham Harper's like, yeah, sure, why not? That's a great idea. So it's like shows his direction style. It's unique in classic Doctor, and also he's like taking suggestions. Yeah, why not go under the table? That's a great idea. That's not something that a lot of directors take on board.
It's a very modern way of directing,
which is why
where it's much more.
Which is also why Russell was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll take you on board. I want you to do a lot of David Tennant episodes.
Yeah, it's much more let's work with the actors rather than the actors work for me way of directing, which leads to quite oftentimes a better product, as you can see with this episode compared to a lot of other Classic Who episodes. The episode continues as we cut to Politics Man sitting in his politics chair having a politics conversation with a politics lady sitting in a different politics chair, and they're having a bit of a back and forth, and she's being very rude and sassy to him, and he's like, why are you giving me all this disrespect? And she's like, oh, it's basically because you've completely screwed yourself. every single thing you've done has been told to the authorities. You're a wanted man. All your assets have been seized. I have your job now. Goodbye. And it's great. He just absolutely gets fucked over by being overzealous and thinking he's the smartest one in the room, when actually the smartest one in the room was the lady that was hiding behind him the entire time. It's great stuff. Some really genuine good, like, politicsy twisty stuff. He gets screwed over completely.
And again, his story isn't connected to the Doctor at all, so it's nice to see him get foiled in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets foiled by himself, really, foiled by his own hubris. This causes the Rambo guys behind him to kind of lose faith and be like, we're not going anywhere. We want to go home. We've got enough to live on. You can't do anything for us now. Except for Rambo leader, who decides that he is going to stay with Politics Man after all, and they're going to go and get the stuff from Jack. He then, as they're leaving the ship, he comes back and he murders his own men, which is great. It does leave me with some questions in his own logic. Like, he's like a mercenary, and the dude he's working with now has got no money at all and no means of paying him, and is provably like a snaky person who would probably kill him given the opportunity to keep the money for himself. Is the better business decision not to just stay with your men and go to the next job? Like, this guy is blinded by his... I guess he just has like a crush on the politics guy. He wants to be best buds and hang out. That would be my guess.
But yeah, him killing all the men was a late addition, and this means that every single male character in this story dies, which is such a great touch. The females only survive because...
Even the Doctor.
Yeah, even the Doctor dies. And the females only survive because Robert Holmes said a thing about killing off females. He didn't want to kill off a single woman in his scripts, which is an interesting touch.
I guess... Progressive?
I don't know. But yeah, if you remember, when we did Genesis of the Daleks, there was a female... Foul soldier, and she only survived because she was a woman. It's such a weird thing.
That is a weird thing. That's whatever. We then, inside the caves, the Rambo guy's basically like, hey, politics guy, by the way, you're no longer my boss. We're on equal footing. If anything, I'm in charge of you now. So that's how it's going to be. Okay. And they continue through the caves some more as we cut to the Doctor making his way to Perry and Jack, who's found his mask and put it back on. And Perry is in much worse for wear as the Doctor rubs celery all over her face. To try and wake her up, which does lead to a quite funny line where she's like, hello, Doctor, and then she starts to fade again. She's like, goodbye, Doctor, and passes out. It's some pretty funny little writing there. But the Doctor's like, we need to get the milk from the queen bat, which is the only cure for this incurable disease, if we remember correctly. But the only way to get it is to dive deep into the caves where there's very little oxygen, so deep that even Jack himself has never ventured in that far. But the Doctor's not worried because he can hold oxygen for much longer than a measly human, and Jack even gives him a small canister of oxygen just to be safe.
Is that a thing that still carries on to this day?
Is
that a thing that happens in the episode Oxygen?
What, this... I don't remember. The most I remember is in that the episode where Capaldi gets blinded.
He gets blinded because of a lack of oxygen, I think.
Yeah. Oh wait, no. Doesn't he get blinded in the library episode? And then he's blind the entire time, but he's not telling anybody. Isn't he blinded in the episode before?
Episode.
Yeah, they're in like this big library thing. I don't remember what it's called.
No, I think he gets blinded in oxygen. I mean he's blind for multiple episodes, which was an interesting twist.
No, he gets blinded in Extremis. Which
Oh.
Extremis.
It's been a while since I've seen
which takes place
10.
in like a weird library bit. But yeah, then he's blind throughout the entirety of Oxygen and a couple more episodes, which was honestly an amazing... I remember that twist being like, holy crap, this is such an interesting way to take the Doctor. This is brilliant. That was a good time. But anyway, back to more important matters. Perry's passed out and Jack starts rubbing her face a lot. He does this over and over again. It's kind of his thing. We've got quite a long scene now of people just kind of wandering through caves, as we've got Jack kind of like nursing Perry back to health, or attempting to just kind of keep her comfortable by putting cloths and stuff on her face, as the doctor's making his way through a painting, which it's actually quite cool. It's like this wide shot matte painting off the cave system, so we're seeing like a heap of rocks and stuff, and the small gap in between, which has the doctor climbing through it, which kind of makes it like have this like claustrophobic feel, which it kind of adds this like, oh god, is he gonna get out of this
matte
type
paintings
deal.
in classic TV shows and movies. Like, it's never the same with CGI. I just love the artist touch, you know what I mean, where you can just feel that an artist was involved. And before this, after this, he bumps into a magma monster again, who has died.
It's after this.
Okay, after this, he bumps into a magma monster.
He does. Our big friend, the holiday armadillo, he bumps into it, and it's just dead on the ground, and he's like, god, I can't believe you're dead, buddy, that sucks. Anyway, moving on. It's literally it's like a 2-second scene, and I feel like that scene was only there because they were like, oh, we don't have anything for this stupid dragon, how do we get rid of it? It died, whatever. Just like the doctor sees it's dead. So it takes up no real film. It's like 2 seconds.
In the original script, magma creature would attack the doctor and fall into the magma below, but the scene was removed from the final cut because they had ran out of studio time, basically, because of the strike, and everything was just coming too close together, so they cut it out entirely, which is a better choice, because the magma monster is the weakest, pretty much the only weak part of this episode, I would say. For sure.
It doesn't need to be in it at all. Like, you could get rid of every scene that has the magma monster, and you would still have a completely coherent episode. You know, it is pretty bleh, to be sure. And talking about things that are bleh, the Rambo dude and the politician make their way to Jack, and this is where things start to get a bit really silly and violent, as they like confront Jack, and they're like, we're gonna kill you, Jack, and he's like, yeah, well, look at my gross face, and he takes off the mask, and we get a good look at his face, and it's like fine. It's not as gross as you would probably expect. It's like a clammy sort of like it looks like his bottom face, like his skin is made of clay, and he's got like a gross looking eye and a big like metal black forehead and skull, which I'm guessing is being like replaced with android parts, is what they're kind of going for with that. It's like a fine. It doesn't look distractingly bad. It kind of reminds me of like original cut Emperor, you know, when he's like a weird clay face dude before they replaced him in the special edition. Yeah, he's like this weird, like he's got like a really droopy eye. Like
so in the original script, it says, we see a hairless skull devoid of most facial flesh until below the nose. From there, it falls away into the neck like moldering green cheese.
Green cheese. That's an interesting. Yeah, okay.
Disgusting.
Yeah, but this leads to Jack fighting with the politician man, and then he gets shot by the Rambo dude, and then the Rambo dude gets shot by Robot Salatine, and then the Jack then puts the politician's head into like this electric thing that starts a big fire. It's basically everybody everybody kills everybody. It's very silly. Like the bit when Salatine comes out the shadows and shoots the Rambo dude, like the second after he shot Jack, it made me laugh because I was like, this is ridiculous. Everybody's just killing each other. But it's very violent, and it's, you know, I guess it kind of makes sense, you know, that, you know, nobody really wins in this scenario. Everybody that's trying and vying for power, they all kind of crumble and kill themselves. But the whole base catches fire. Robot Salatine just kind of shuts down. Whatever happened to human Salatine? I guess he was in the caves, and he just got killed by the androids.
Maybe he got killed in the mud burst. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. He probably got killed in the mud burst.
I don't think they ever mention it. I think he's just kind of left to the wayside, which is fair enough. He doesn't really have much else to do as a character, does he?
But what I do like is when the Doctor isn't involved in the downfall of any character, he just wants to save Perry, and that's his only one track mind. Everything else happens outside of him. He's not involved in the plot, which is sometimes a criticism, but I really like it about this story.
I can see it being understand the criticism for it, because you remove the Doctor, the story's still exactly the same. But I think just for this one time, it's unique enough. Like, if every episode was like this, it would be like, oh, okay, this is kind of like the Indiana Jones thing, isn't it? You know, where you get rid of Indiana Jones and you have the exact same movies and the Nazis still die. But it's fun enough, and it's fun to see the Doctor, like, who's usually so heavily involved in the plot, not be involved in the plot, but everybody still think that he is. Yeah. And everybody be like, oh, you're up to something, Doctor. You're doing something right now. And he's like, I'm honestly not. I just want to go home. Like, I just want to leave this place.
The Doctor is just like, the Doctor and Harry are just constant victims throughout the whole story, which I've said before, but I just really love that touch. It feels warranted for a final adventure, for the Doctor just to be a constant victim of the circumstances around him.
Yeah, and he grabs Perry, having got the milk from the bat, and carries her out of the caves as explosions go off around them. It's very dramatic, almost cinematic as well, with how, like, kind of like action movie it is, you know, like, you imagine like a big fiery explosion as he's walking in slow motion carrying.
Explosions are really well done. The explosions in the classic are always really good. I really like the explosions there, and there's one point where an explosion goes off way too early, and the sand actually shoots into Davidson's eyes, so you see him flinch slightly, which sounds like a lot of pain. I'd hate getting sand anywhere. I hate sand.
Yeah, it would have sucked.
It's coarse, it's rough, it's irritating.
Yeah, it's rough. It gets everywhere. Yeah, it gets everywhere. But the Doctor manages to get back into the TARDIS and manages to make it disappear just as explosions go off around it, which is a really nice looking effect. And he then pours the cure into Perry's mouth, and she wakes up as he collapses. And then we get to a very famous scene where he's like, is this what death feels like? You know, is this the end of me? Am I about to die? I don't even know if I'm going to regenerate. It feels weird this time. And we see like all his previous companions start appearing on the screen, and they start telling the Doctor a bunch of stuff. I'm sure this would have more emotional impact if I was aware of who these characters were, but we get to see, like, I recognized the kid whose name I'm forgetting right now.
And Tegan is in it, and
Adric,
Nissa is in it, and Chameleon is in it, the Doctor's robot companion he had for like 2 episodes. Everyone's here.
Oh, wow. All the gang, the whole gang. And they're all telling the Doctor that he can't die until the Master shows up, and he's like, no, Doctor, die. Die. That'd be great. Die, Doctor. Ha 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 ha. Like a cartoon villain that he is. And it's a very interesting way to shoot a regeneration. We've talked about this regeneration before, because it's yes, we have. We talked about it at some point last year. I don't remember what episode specifically, but we were talking. I don't remember what brought it up, but it was this regeneration is famous for being overshadowed, particularly by Perry's boobs, which. And this is no fault to Perry at all. This is entirely the goddamn costume that they have her in, and the angle that they are shooting. Her tits are just like falling out of her top, and like it is like the main focus point of the camera when the Doctor is like in her arms, and it's like, why are you shooting it like this? Just change the angle, or like get like.
Peter Davison famously says he's acting his heart out here, and he's overshadowed by Nicola Bryant's breasts. And Nicola Bryant is like, I was born this way. It's not my fault, and I didn't choose to wear this costume. It's not her fault at all. But it's as two cis straight men, it's hard not to notice, to be honest.
I think it would be hard not to notice regardless of your identity. Like, it's right in your goddamn face, the way that this is shot. It's ridiculous. But again, it's not her fault. It is the costume that they gave the character.
Yeah.
It's a terrible costume.
And to be fair,
but it's for the dads. It's for the dads, isn't it?
She only started getting decent costumes near the end of her run, which is really sad, because, when we did Attack of the Cybermen, she's got this bright pink, tight top on, and it's a bit too much.
Yeah, it is.
So the cure that
the
cure that Perry has to drink was originally going to be a watered down Dettol solution, until they realized that Nicola Bryant actually had to swallow it, so it became watered down milk instead. And also Nicola Bryant only found out that Peter Davison was going to leave a show when it got announced on the news, which is like such a last minute finding out your co-star that you're just starting to meet is leaving the show.
Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. That was such a weird. That'd be such a shock to be like, what is this? Is this true? And then you would you would send them a message, as you would do in the 1980s through Facebook. You'd send them a text being like, what's going on? Why didn't I tell you this? And then they'd FaceTime you and be like, I'm sorry.
And also the visuals of the actual regeneration was inspired by 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I can 100% see as an inspiration. And Graham Harper was also inspired by The Day in the Life, which was the Beatles song where there's like 3 different pianos and 3 different pianos playing the same chord for 40 seconds with a crash at the end, if you're familiar with the song. And it gave Harper the idea to do a big psychedelic sequence of all the companions swirling around the Doctor's head, with the music building and building up, and there's an explosion into a big chord at the end, and then you see Colin Baker. But Harper said he only got around 60% of what he actually wanted in the regeneration, mainly because of the time and money involved during in using effects. He only had about 4 hours to put everything together. He wanted to do something different. The intent was to have Peter Davison lying on the floor in his face to gradually disintegrate under electronic effects, and then bring in Colin Baker and do the same but in reverse. But instead it's more of like a white flash, which is the final output of it.
Yeah, it's like a pop. It goes like pop, and then Colin Baker's there. And speaking of Colin Baker, he pops up and Perry's like, Doctor? And he's like, oh, were you expecting someone else? Change and not a moment too soon, which is his very famous first lines. And, we've not really dove into Colin Baker much as the Doctor. We've covered one episode with him. We'll be covering another episode later on this year, actually next month. Because he's the next Doctor. So it'll be interesting to see. I really liked him as the Doctor when we covered him last year. He's controversial Doctor, famously the only Doctor to be fired from the show. Whole heap of shenanigans happened with him.
Shame, but we saw him in person. He's happy enough being involved in the show. He's still doing the show with Big Finish, so I'm happy. But he still gets to experience Doctor Who.
Not just that. He was in Doctor Who in The Power of the Doctor. He came back.
So just a little bit about Colin Baker. He was actually previously on Doctor Who as a guard in the Ark of Infinity, which I believe was the season before this. It was a small, boring part, so Colin Baker tried to spice it up as much as he possibly could in the hope that the director could pull him back and something more could come from it, and obviously something more did come from it. He got a lovely note from John Nathan Turner, the producer, when he saw the episode. 2 months later, the floor manager on that story invited Colin and his wife to her wedding. Peter Davison and John Nathan Turner was there, and what Colin Baker didn't know at the time was that Peter Davison had told John Nathan Turner he was leaving the show. So John Nathan Turner, throughout the whole wedding, he was like, God, who's going to be the next Doctor? Jesus Christ, this is a tough decision. And then obviously Colin Baker was there, and he was so witty and entertaining at the wedding. And when Colin Baker left, John Nathan Turner was like, that guy's my next Doctor, right there.
That's understandable. I mean, just seeing him when we saw him at Comic-Con, he's a funny dude. He is quick-witted, he's charming, he's lovely, absolutely lovely guy. So I can understand how he managed to charm his way into getting the role.
This is actually the first regeneration story to include the new Doctor's first words, which is more of a... It's more familiar to us as new viewers because also the tradition kept up. But before this, you just saw the face and that's it, which is a terrible way to go out because you're only looking at the face. You're not getting a vibe of what the new Doctor is going to be like.
It also doesn't get you as excited because you're just like, oh, it's a dude. Whereas, like when David Tennant comes in, he's like, ooh, teeth, or Matt Smith, and he's like, I'm a girl. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. I'm still not ginger. And Capaldi yells, kidneys. There's...
And also what was different about this one to compare to most regenerations, apart from the first regeneration, was that you could see the next Doctor the following week because the final story of this season was Colin Baker's first story, which is infamous for being really, really bad. So maybe they could have chosen a better episode to start off with.
Yeah, that's the I think just the shame of the way that they used to do it, because if this was the last episode of the season, what a great way to end it. What an amazing cliffhanger to end it on. But that's just not the way TV worked back then, I guess, which is a shame. But that is where this episode ends and where we finish looking at the Caves of Androzani. So, Scott, what are your very, very detailed opinions on this story as a whole?
So this is the first time I've actually watched the story in about 16 years. And I remember nothing from it apart from some iconic shots of the Doctor carrying Perry across the mud field, or the iconic regeneration scene, which I've seen multiple times. And so I didn't really know what to expect coming into it, apart from everyone else saying it's the best episode of all time. And I think I would agree with most people's opinions on this episode. There's not really any complaints apart from the dragon creature, which we covered in depth.
Yeah.
I can't think of any negatives. Yeah. It's just a fun paced story with great acting, great villains, and it's a shame that more classic Doctor Who isn't this tightly paced, this well written, well produced, well directed. It's a really good story, and for Peter Davison to go out like this, he's very lucky. A lot of regeneration specials aren't this good, so he's very lucky.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. This was my first time ever seeing the episode, ever. So in 23 years, I'd never seen this episode. I had seen, obviously, the regeneration as well, because as a kid, you get excited about Doctor Who, you find out about Classic Who, and you'll go on YouTube and you'll look at every Doctor Who regeneration ever. And you watch that compilation, and so that's all I knew about this, but I didn't recognize that it was this episode. As I said last week, I went into this completely not knowing it was a regeneration episode, which added a really interesting twist when the Doctor actually died, and I was like, this was amazing, this was brilliant, what an awesome way to tell that story, and I really, really, really enjoyed this episode of Classic Who. Probably up there as one of my favorites. When it goes to Classic Who, I think pacing wise, it's way better. It's way more manageable. There's bits here and there where it's a bit iffy, but that's mainly just the dragon stuff. Everything else is really good. Weird guy that looks into the camera. What a vibe! What an interesting vibe of a dude. It's cool. It's got a lot going on, and I feel like it's a really nice little. Almost, it feels like they're kind of figuring out parts that modern Who would take and then be like, oh, this actually worked. These parts here, these all worked, and we can move them and adapt them into being a more modern TV show that you can see. Whereas you can watch some episodes of Classic Who and you're like, they didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea.
It's a story that's aged incredibly well. This story is 40 next year, and it feels more modern than most Classic Who. And also, you watched it all in one sitting, which most stories it would be so long, but this one just moves along. It's constantly at the same pace. There's hardly ever a slow moment of a story. It just has a perfect pace.
Yeah, it's a good time. It is a good time for sure. Next week, what are we looking at,
We are
Scott?
looking at Dalek Invasion of Earth, 2150 AD, the second Peter Cushing movie. We did the first one last year to celebrate our 1 year anniversary, so of course this time around we're doing it to celebrate our 2nd year anniversary, which is amazing.
Crazy. Yeah, it's cool. It's crazy it's been going this long. It's also crazy how well it's been doing recently. We've just come off our 2nd best week ever for the podcast. Our, absolutely fantastic. Our YouTube is the best it's ever been. So if you're watching this on YouTube, hello, thank you for watching this. That's really cool. Just everything is green arrows pointing up, and that makes my heart be a green arrow pointing up.
Yeah,
It's really
thank
cool.
you to anyone who's taking
so-
their time out of the day to watch us, which it means a lot. And if you'd like to share it along with your friends, just subscribe, like our videos, and send.
If you're watching this, you don't have any friends, do you?
True.
Yeah,
Relatable.
I knew it. No, please do share it. And if you're listening to this on audio, make sure to leave a review on whatever app you're listening to it on. If you're listening to it on Podcast Addict or iTunes, I should be able to find the review and I'll be able to read it out on the podcast, probably at the end of the month in our news. So if you want that to happen, leave a review, or even leave a review and tell me you left a review by sending us a message on Facebook or Twitter. Facebook is Who Watches Who, Twitter is @WatchesDoctor. You can hit us up on social media and we will be sure to respond, or leave a comment down below on the YouTube video. Engagement's doing well. Let's keep this gravy train rolling. I'd love to hear some other people's thoughts on this episode in particular, because it is such an interesting and unique episode. But yeah, next week we'll be looking at the Dalek Invasion of Earth, whatever year it said, 2150, whatever. And until then, you can find us on our social media. As I said, you can listen to this podcast in audio form. You can listen to it or watch it on video form at YouTube. YouTube's @Who Watches Who. There's a lot of links in the description. Just click one of them. It'll take you somewhere magical, I'm sure. One of them's a virus. That's a lie. 2 of them are viruses. But until then, bye. I guess. Goodbye. This is weird. Bye.